Tonight on First to the Floor, Dan Greenburg, you know him best as Greenie from Barstool Sports, joins us to break down the Celtics' gritty win in Toronto and much, much more.
Who's going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
Brown drives, layup on the glass.
That's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice his body.
Garnett, knocked away.
Spooney here with my man Jake Issenberg to break down that Raptors game. Jake, how you doing?
Feeling good, mate. Still riding high off that third quarter.
Absolutely. And we got a special guest. You know him. You probably follow him, especially if you know who we are. Dan Greenburg, hey Greenie from Barstool Sports. Greenie, how's it going, my man?
Listen, I'm with him. I could not be riding. I'm whatever cloud 9 is, I'm like 3 levels above cloud 9.
Like 18, yeah.
How could you not be?
I know, dude. Even Scal said it was his favorite win of the season, and then we had the struggle bus last 3 minutes. He almost jinxed us, but they pulled it out. So before we get into the Raptors game, which I know we're all itching to talk about, Greenie, real quick, you've got some news. Something happened on Barstool Sports. I went to the website the other day, and then all of a sudden I see your name plastered at the top. What's going on, man?
To be honest, it's in typical Barstool fashion. I had no idea what that even was, that it was going to be a thing. When I learned, essentially, as it has been explained to me, is if any person watching this or reading whatever remembers the old initial pre-merger Barstool, it was all super local, super city based. It's how I came up, being the Celtics guy. It's how a lot of people get started there as being a team or local sports blogger. But now that they're so huge and they're a media conglomerate, they were looking for a way to still find that, local tie-in that wouldn't just get lost in the main feed of the blog. So they decided that's where my Celtics game blogs will live. You'll see some Bruins game blogs up there from Marina, who does a great job with them. Just other local, and the way it's been explained is like new bloggers, new local team sports bloggers. That's where they'll live. So I had no idea it was happening. When I learned of it, I begged them to call it something different because it is just so weird.
It's your name.
Nobody knows what it is. It's very Barstool of how it was introduced, but I'm pumped, I guess. I would have been fine just having my stuff be on the main feed like it always was. But if this is something they want to try, I'm obviously pumped for it. And if it allows me to go out and maybe find other, sports bloggers or people that want to live this dream, I mean, literally, that's all I did was just write about the Celtics and try to build my voice in that space. So, the blog is so big and there's so much that goes up every day. You can get lost, if you're, not a main person. So we'll see how it goes, but I am trying to convince them to call it something else because it just makes me wildly uncomfortable that's what it's called. So,
well, dude, congratulations, because when you go on the site, it says Barstool, and then in huge letters next to it, it says Greenie.
I know. It's cool, but it makes me wildly uncomfortable. I don't know.
All right. Enough talking about that.
Well, yeah, it's just like Tatum being asked about the MVP last night and him talking about how it's surreal. Same levels right there.
Exactly. Exactly.
MVP and Tab on the
all right. The Celtics beat the Raptors 116-110, coming off a back-to-back, their third game in 4. Al Horford was out. Obviously, Rob Williams was out, and obviously Danilo Gallinari was out. It was a gutsy win from the Celtics. So let's go around, guys. What is your big main takeaway from this game? Greenie, I'll throw it to you first.
Yeah. For me, it was probably 2 things. The first is, I'm someone who I don't mind when the Celtics have to play a tough game, right? When they aren't killing everyone by 20 or they're falling into bad habits, because I do think it's every season, it's important that you can establish you have that mental toughness. You're gonna, be able to overcome adversity when things aren't going your way. And I think it was very obvious to anyone who watched that game, based on how that first half went, it was not, a cakewalk. And anytime they play the Miamis, the Torontos, these teams that are physical, that have length. Like, I want to see how this team responds. So the mental toughness and their ability to, put aside all the garbage and just play the right way when they had to, that was huge. Two, it is really a reminder of how much of a tier above everybody else they really are, because you're without Rob, of course, but you're without Al, you're without Brogdon, you had a bad whistle, and it took like 6 minutes of the third quarter for them to establish themselves like, okay, like now we're ready to play. So for me, it was a good sign of their mental toughness and their ability to play through adversity. But also it was a reminder of like, listen, we're dealing with a wagon, and every the statistics back it up, the record backs it up. And even just when you watch them play, like when they lock in and they really, step on a team's throat, it is just it's an 8-0 run before you even know, what happened. So
yeah, the third quarter last night, but like they just had no business being in this game or winning this game. Like third game in 4 nights, back to back, going through customs in Toronto. They don't get in, until like 3-4 in the morning. And Toronto is not the team that you want to see on the back to back. Nick Nurse, I forget how much I hate him every time until I see him on the sideline, and then I just get flashbacks of him standing on the court in the bubble, like, and Tatum throwing him that pass, and nothing ever happened to him. He just got away with it scot free. The mental toughness, like a lot of the wins that they've had this year that have been really big, like Mavs, the Philly game, Memphis, Denver, like they've kind of just won them easily. Like the Memphis one, we kind of had to sweat out at the end because they blew like that 13-point lead, which is just something they like to do to us. But this was the first one where it felt like they really had to buckle down, grit and grind their way to it. Like Tatum diving on the floor, Jalen diving on the floor, Blake Griffin diving on the floor. Like we hadn't really seen like this level of grit to just grind one of like what's supposed to be a top 4, top 5 team in the East to dust. Like, and after you go, Spooney, I have like a little sequence that I think just sums up what this game was perfectly.
Yeah, and I think, Greenie, you kind of touched on what my takeaway is. Last year, I remember at the first half of the season, we kept saying, like, this team is not good enough, not talented enough to just turn it on and off like they were trying to do. And then in the second half of the season, 8-man rotation, playing every minute like it's the playoffs, and eventually it ground them down in the playoffs. It's starting to look like this team is good enough this year to turn it on and off when they need to. I'm reminded of the Oklahoma City fourth quarter where it was like, wow, OKC's kind of like taking it to us a little bit. And then it's like switch to flip, dominate the fourth quarter, and
Kings
go ahead
well.
and get the win. Yeah, the Kings game as well. And really kind of the Brooklyn game too. And so I'll throw it to you first, Jake, but who is your standout performance in this game? Who do you want to give the gold star to?
I want to say Blake. I want to say Blake. 4-0 as a starter. Yeah. Okay, well, whatever. Let's just go Blake because, he played 32 minutes last night. Whoever came up with the Blake role is a genius, whether it was Brad. Yeah, it's Brad. It has to be Brad, right? So Brad's just a wizard. Again, like, okay, so you're not going to play garbage time. You're going to start every time Al is out on back-to-backs, which is obviously the plan going in. So you get full buy-in from a guy like Blake in this role, which helps Peyton Pritchard buy into his role as well, by the way. So then you get Blake turning into like this gritty glue guy who's just diving on the floor, getting defensive rebounds. Every time he got a defensive rebound, the bench was up on their feet, cheering. Like the elite vibes that Blake is bringing to the team, and like that's what you needed. He was kind of like the tip of the spear when it came to like locking in and grinding it out, because it's like if you see Blake Griffin, who's 34, who kind of doesn't have knees, he's the one diving on the floor and hustling play after play. And then taking it's Marcus. Charges. Taking charges. Like, I want to check the charge numbers because like he's got to be leading per 36 easy because he's getting.
Yeah, I think Kevin Love probably still owns like the overall, but him and Derek White I think are well in the top 5 in charges, John.
Yeah, I think for me it's Blake. I think he kind of sparked that feeling.
Yeah, Greenie.
So the real answers are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Right? But I feel like that's just like you pencil that in no matter what.
Right.
For me, it's Marcus Smart. I mean, just in the contrast of the game before against Brooklyn, where he's not in and the offense looks stagnant. They only had, I think, like a 102 or 103 offensive rating. There was so much ISO ball. He comes back, even though he only had 7 assists only, right? Like, it wasn't a team lead, but just things felt more normal, right? The ball, they had 27 assists on 43 baskets. He is doing such a great job of establishing paint touches and driving kicks, setting up open threes. Defensively, he was like Blake. He's diving on the floor. He's giving you all those stereotypical Marcus Smart things. For me, it was just so obvious why this team needs a player like him and what his skill set provides, because they just looked like the normal wagon that we've grown accustomed to start the year. And I think even though their defense was lights out against Brooklyn, it was a slog offensively.
Yes.
It was every bad habit that we know gets this team into trouble. So for him to come back, his foot looked good, his quickness looked good, and he just, it felt like even without Brogdon, who's another main facilitator off the bench, that just the way they were playing was back to normal. And I think that starts with how Smart plays.
And real quick on Marcus Smart, that third quarter is when the Celtics took over the game. The Raptors went into halftime with a 6-point lead. They had gotten it up to 13 in that second quarter. Smart in the third quarter played every minute, 8 points, 4 assists, plus 17, along with Tatum, who is also a plus 17 for 17 points. Not bad. But yeah, you guys said, I'm just going to shout out 2 things about the Jays as my standout performance. One, I thought Tatum was hustling like crazy. Dude was everywhere on the glass. You could tell he did not want to lose this game. He was diving for balls. He was jumping into the crowd. He was everywhere defensively. And Jaylen Brown's passing, we're going to have to start to really talk about that, man. He's like hitting Luke Cornett on the pick and roll for dunks and stuff. Like, who is this guy, man? He had 8 assists, 22
0
points,
turnovers.
No turnovers.
Back to back.
Yeah, so he's had 15 assists and 5 turnovers. And I think the problem, not really problem, but like what's tough with Jaylen is like he gets compared to Tatum. And like that's not fair because, it's okay to be a 27 point per game all NBA number 2 option. Like,
it's not bad.
Not everybody on the Celtics has to be a generational talent. So I feel for him in that regard because it's like, oh man, how come like his assists to turnovers are still 1-to-1? And like Tatum's doing it, he's improving as a passer. And it's like, listen, for what his role is, if he's going to give you 8 assists and 0 turnovers, like just take that as the bonus. Like that's not who he's going to be. That's not what they're asking him to be. But he's showing that he has the capability to do it on any given night. And I think that's just as important.
Yeah, and I think like we all have kind of different best performances of the night. I think that kind of speaks to how good the team is. Like you can kind of go up and down the roster. I feel like the whole team played really well last night, and I have this sequence here that I think encapsulates it perfectly. We get Fred VanVleet deciding to ISO on D White, takes a mid-range pull-up, perfect contest. Yep. Marcus pushes the pace.
What a rebound. Jesus.
Yeah.
I know.
And you see the bench off the Blake rebound. Everybody's up. We get a nice Missoula ball, drive and kick. Jaylen into the paint, draws 2 or 3. Marcus gets to it first. Backdoor cut to Jaylen. Dunk.
Exactly.
That caps the 13-3 run. Timeout. Bench loves it. Toronto gets a bucket off the timeout. Toronto plays really good defense on this play. Snuffs out the Tatum cut. Bring it back out. Snuffs out the Smart post up. There's 7 seconds left on the shot clock. And Tatum's like, I got the 7-footer on me. Step back. 3. Cash. It's like, what are you supposed to do?
Ball game
with this team?
So to me, that illustrates the exact, like in that first clip, I think there was probably 2 or 3 smart paint touches on that one possession. The Tatum bailout 3 is like, okay, sometimes your hero is just going to pull something out and save you. But it tells you on the defensive end, they have 3 elite guys that can give you quality perimeter defense to stay with these quick, shifty guards like Fred VanVleet. And then on the offensive end, everyone's making the extra pass, and it starts with your point guard. It starts with him setting the tone of, we could have seen Smart go coast to coast on that play and force a layup and probably not make it. But instead, what does he do? He draws the defense. He's patient. He finds the right play at the right moment, and they score from it. So I'm with you. That sort of, demonstrates not just Missoula ball, but the benefit of having all your core pieces on this roster be together for 5-6 years. Like that chemistry with Jalen, they're not even thinking about it. It's just he knows where he expects the ball, and Jalen knows that if he cuts in that moment, Smart's going to find him. It's literally the Dynasty Warriors with Draymond finding Steph exactly where he needs the ball coming off a screen. It's finding Clay coming off a cut. Like, you only get that by having that sustained continuity, which is why they should have never blown it up. And now look what happens.
Yeah, and Smart's averaging 2.5 assists to each J for 5 assists a game, which is just an incredible number. So the one dark spot in that second half, 13-point game, Celtics up, we're cruising, 3 minutes left. Scal utters the phrase, "This is my favorite win of the season." And the Raptors, on cue, go on a 6-0 run to cut it and make it a game and pinch all of our collective sphincters as Celtics fans. So what do you credit that Raptors run to? Was it the Raps just coming alive, tired legs on the back-to-back, or is it pure Scal jinx?
I mean, the Raptors are good, right? So
yes.
I tweeted out as soon as that fourth quarter started, like, in every Raptors game, I feel, not just against the Celtics, but in every one they play, they're always within this, like, 6 to 8 point range, and there's always a fourth quarter run just based on how aggressive Siakam is. You can get some Gary Trent threes. So I want to give them credit of, like, listen, they were playing well, especially at home. They were, they weren't mailing it in once the Celtics went on that run. So you knew it was coming. I attribute it probably like 35% to the Scal jinx. I heard it and I was like, what? I'm like doing the scoreboard math. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, we're not clear yet. And really, there's only two things that Scal does that bothers me. One is that he always loves to call the games early. And two, any sort of minor injury or slip up, his reactions make me think that someone just like blew out his, like the Luke Cornett,
when the leg fell off.
Yeah.
I thought he blew out his knee. And it's just like, I'm not.
No. It's like, just relax, Scal, please.
I'm someone, I love Scal on the broadcast.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a pro Scal guy. But it's like when Smart went down, when Jalen falls, it's like he needs to realize that, like, I'm watching this on TV. There was the play. It was a play where, like, Smart went up for a rebound. It was on ESPN game, I think. And they cut away from it. It was like a dual broadcast, ESPN, NBC Boston. And I was somewhere that was watching it had the ESPN feed. So there was that play where Smart, like, it looked like his head smashed on the ground, but the camera cut away from it. And then when I rewatched it the next day on the NBC broadcast, you hear Scal talking like Marcus just died. And so
get the stretcher.
So that was tough, but I think mostly it was just the Raptors. Like, listen, you knew they had a punch in them. You knew that the Celtics were going to have to execute down the stretch. And when they started going for those home run threes, as soon as Scal said that, it did not surprise me in the least that the Raptors went on a quick 6-0 run.
So we have another co-host called Joe, and he has a magic number formula for, like, when the games are getting towards the end and when you're safe. And I personally hate it because he never feels like the magic number is right, but it's been right every time.
It's always
minutes
right.
Minutes remaining times 2 plus 2. And it's only ever been wrong once, I believe. The problem is it gets down to, like, the razor edge of it flipping the other way a lot, and I'm
all right, so hold on. Explain this to me. So if it's start over. You got to explain it to me like I'm 5.
Well, look, I'm not the maths guy, so maybe Spooney's got to jump in. But
oh no,
so it's like if there's 3 minutes remaining, it's 3
Mm-hmm.
minutes times 2 plus 2.
Yeah,
so which makes it 8
points.
So you would feel like comfortable that
right.
No, the other team has to play perfectly from that point forward to win. And the Raptors started that out with those 3 minutes left, basically playing perfectly. Okay. So that's why it gets tight and then scary. So that's the magic number, but it is right basically all of the time.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'm hopefully, well, I should say I would want to see that tomorrow, but I'm hoping that there is not a stressful fourth quarter against the Suns. So maybe not.
That would be nice. That would be nice. I'm not super hopeful, but this is just an NBA problem. It's not. It's in general. Like teams get up 10 plus with like 3 minutes to go, and they just try and bleed the clock, and you get terrible possessions out of it. So you're not scoring, and then the other team's playing super aggressively and getting up quick shots, and you're in like a mindset of I don't have anything to lose. You know, we kind of saw it with Jalen hitting that bank shot, which is kind of luck, but when you're confident.
They got very lucky with those turnovers in the final 2 minutes of that game.
Yeah, right? Like the OG Anunoby just catch on the side. Yeah,
OG. I don't know if it was Van Vliet or something. There were like 2 or 3 turnovers in those final.
Van Vliet had a wide open 3 when it was like 5 points too that he clanged, but that goes in. Who knows what happens there? Right. And actually, that kind of brings me to the next thing I want to talk about. So the last 4 games, right? I think that was the 2 Heat games, the Nets game, and now this Raptors game. I think it's safe to say it's been a little sloppy, right? I mean, these have not been clean games. For whatever reason, the Nets play way harder. I've watched some Nets games. They do not play defense like that against other teams. Kyrie's like diving into the crowd. Like that's the one time all year he'll do it. So we still have the 7th best offense in the last 4 games, up to the 10th best defense in those 4 games, but like a little bit sloppy. Turnovers, saw some of the bad habits return. Like Greenie, are you worried at all, or do you think it's just kind of a blip, a function of who we're playing?
I don't know if it's worried, but it's something, especially the turnovers, just because I view the NBA as a copycat league, right? And I think to defend the Celtics, the book is sort of out where you need to get in their airspace, you need to make them uncomfortable, and when they drive, everybody comes from the wing to try to poke it loose or, try to be that distraction. I don't think it's an accident that Brooklyn did it, Miami did it twice, and then we saw it again last night against Toronto. Those are teams that have length. They're teams that clearly follow the same defensive blueprint, and those are 4 games that we probably saw the Celtics. I think on the season they have like a 13.5 or 13.7 turnover percentage. I bet you if you were to look it up over those 4 games, they're probably closer to like 16 or 17% turnover percentage. And it basically reminds you of the finals and the Eastern Conference Finals. Like the teams that defended the Celtics that way have all had the same result. You may not win the game, because obviously there's so much firepower to counteract it. But I do not consider it an accident that Jalen's turnovers were high, Tatum's turnovers were high, and each of those teams had the same get in their airspace, be physical with them off ball. I think we're going to see that for the rest of basically their time together because it's been proven effective.
Yeah, well, this is probably a good time to ask you how you're managing your PTCD, your post-traumatic Celtics disorder, because
not great at times. Not great.
Because you're I think you do an awesome job of riding the line of like obsessive compulsive fan and analyst, and like these turnovers, especially the Heat game and the Nets game, like Tatum had 9 turnovers. Like you can't not help but have like physical, reactions to what's happening out there, and like. It makes me think, I'm like, okay, they've been so good turnover-wise, and it's a really good point. The teams that, they have played in the playoffs, not that the Nets turned them over super effectively in that first round, but the book kind of being out on how you kind of go at them. It's me worrying, is the turnover, progression, the development, are we going to turn back into a pumpkin here? Like, I'm kind of just waiting for that to relapse, and then there's that plus the other thing that gives me the most PTCD is Tatum missed layups, which is basically a turnover as well, because he was much better yesterday with finishing at the rim, but the Nets game, it's just not even hitting the rim, it's bouncing off the backboard, and they're basically at half court before he even starts to get up. How are we managing that? Do we think it's a little blip? And by the time we get to the playoffs, is it going to be okay?
I mean, it's interesting because, even against the Heat, we saw Brogdon have the same type of
Yep.
it's they just lose their brain. And
Exactly.
they just forget how to play basketball. It's the most bizarre thing. And I think what gives me the PTSD isn't just the fact that they're turning it over. It's that they're live ball turnovers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like if they were passing the ball out of bounds or they were traveling or stepping on the sideline, like that's tough, but at least you can get back and set your defense. It's the live ball issues where it's just like, play smart. Like we're watching Tatum throw bounce passes in a zone that's like not even close to getting through any Heat defender. And it's just like, just don't lose your mind. You don't have to be perfect, but they just, for whatever reason, forget how to play basketball whenever you get up in their airspace. But those are things I think you can teach on film. And I think, we'll see. Phoenix is a great defensive team. Mikal Bridges is a great on-ball defender. So I'm interested to see, okay, now you're playing a team that when you look at their offense, their defense, their net rating, their point differential, they're just as dominant as you've been through this point of the season. So now on the road, all right, let's see, because they're going to have that same defensive approach.
Yeah, and the Warriors, if you think that they're not going to show up for that one and ramp right back up for that, mentally preparing myself for that one.
Yeah, I think the last 3 teams we played too, they throw a lot of junk defenses at you where you can't run your man stuff, and they switch a ton. And basically the way to attack a switch, right, is to get Tatum onto a big or somebody he can attack. But that in and of itself halts the offense, halts the ball movement, and kind of plays into their hands where they can set the defense, watch Tatum isolate, and then attack his dribble. And that's like the Heat and the Raptors calling card. And I thought Brooklyn did a pretty good job of trying to emulate that as well when we played them. So you're right, Greenie. That's what we're going to see. We're going to see teams hacking the hell out of us too, like the Heat do, and just daring the rest, foul everybody out, because that's your only choice. Otherwise, we're just going to be taking wrists and arms all game long.
And I don't know, I could be just making this up, but I do feel like when we see whether it's Tatum attacking the switch or maybe when he's coming off a high screen, whenever he tries to do a spin or even just his initial drive, I feel like the ball is so far away from his body that it just invites extra defenders into the lane. With Jalen, his turnovers are he's showing the defender the ball before he makes his move. But with Tatum, I feel like when he comes out of that spin, his arm is fully extended, dribble his right arm or whatever arm has the ball. It's just not very tight. And I think when we see when Marcus or when Brogdon, when they're driving to the rim, you don't really see them get it swiped around or poked loose, because I feel like they're driving with the ball much tighter to their body. For whatever reason, Tatum has such a crazy wingspan that I just think it opens up his vulnerability to have an extra hand in there, or for guys to come over and foul him or take it, knock it loose just because of how he dribbles.
Well, yeah, you kind of see it on the inverse with KD, right? Because the Celtics are able to kind of do what people do to Tatum to KD. And maybe it is that, the 6'10", super long arms dribbling thing. It's just harder to do on Giannis because if you get within 6 inches of him, you just fly back into the stanchion.
Right. You get an elbow. Right.
Yeah.
And he's you have to defend him not for you're going to poke the ball loose, but just to try to, absorb the
Derrick Henry.
Survive. Tackle him in the A gap.
Yeah, I think it's a function of just how tall these dudes are, man. You're 6'9" and you're dribbling the ball. That's a long way for it to go. And I'd like to see the numbers on this, and I have no idea how to get them, but I'd like to see Tatum's success attacking bigs on a switch versus point guards, because I feel like guys like Fred VanVleet kind of give him trouble where they can get into his handle and muck it up. And Lowry too uses his strength and just is annoying. And whereas if he's got a big on him, he's so comfortable getting into the step back or just blowing right by him. So,
I mean, maybe there's something to that, because if you remember in the finals, it was Gary Payton Jr., it was Draymond Green, it was, these guys who are, quick, got good hands, they're tough, they got good lateral quickness, they're smart defenders. When it's Tatum up against a big, it's all right, I know I'm bigger, faster, stronger than you. you're not going to steal the ball from me. But it's these quick guards that really understand how to get into your space that give him fits.
Yeah, in game 3, when they were getting Looney out on the perimeter, him and Jalen just took turns blowing by him, and they were like, "Okay, we're gonna switch that
or
up."
like against Brooklyn, whenever he would go up against Nick Claxton,
He
like
roasted.
that's such an unfair matchup. It's just not,
The whole Brooklyn matchup is just not fair for them.
know.
It's just like Seth Curry got to play like 4 minutes because Tatum was just like,
They played
Well, I mean,
well.
they just have that's just a roster build issue. Like even with Ben Simmons back, like okay,
no.
You put Simmons on one of them, like okay, great. Like who else is going to stop Smart or Brogdon or Jalen? Like they just don't have the roster construction to deal with that.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right, moving on here a little bit, Greenie. If anyone follows you, they know from day one, the second this guy stepped on the court for the Celtics, you have been a Marcus Smart believer and defender.
It's true. I do it every day.
He is
Loved and trust.
Every day
Love and trust.
you are attacking the haters and the losers, of which there are many, about Marcus Smart. He's top 10 in assists in the league, career best assist to turnover ratio, career best true shooting, effective field goal percentage, and assist percentage, back to his elite defense. So I just want to give you the floor for a minute and address how good it feels to have Marcus Smart just show you exactly what we all thought he could be.
Yeah, so I'd say it's probably like a top 5 achievement of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm not even remotely joking. Like, I do think it's important, though, to understand, like, I'm not the only one who thinks this. There's plenty of us out there. I just think it's very important. I've been blessed to have this, platform and this audience. And I think it's so prevalent for whether it's, the national media, you got 98.5, like there's so much out there from people with large audiences that speak to a certain narrative. It's just very important that we tell the truth of what also happens. Like we're still hearing people say, oh, Marcus doesn't know his role or he shoots too much. It's like, these are arguments that haven't been accurate in like 5 years. So I just think it's very important that we tell the story of what he's actually doing on the floor.
Yeah.
It just so happens that what he's actually doing follows my agenda. And I just don't think it's an accident that at the same time he was given the keys and empowered by Brad to be the playmaking point guard that we knew he was, that we're seeing the best version of this team. Now, 85% of that has to do with the development of Tatum and Brown. I don't think anyone would debate that. But they do not reach their ceiling if they don't get this version of Marcus Smart. They didn't break through and make a finals until they got this version of Marcus Smart. So for him to now come back and back up what we saw over the last 5 months last season tells you not only is he accepting his role, not only is he, a leader and, the heart and soul, all that stuff that you can't quantify. There's now tangible evidence that supports this claim. So it's like, if you're someone that is having a Marcus Smart debate in 2022, it's just because it's a shtick for you or you're unwilling to accept that you were wrong about the player. That doesn't mean he's perfect. That doesn't mean he's the same level as Tatum and Brown, but he is part of a big three, and they do not reach their potential, and they will not win the NBA Finals without this version of Marcus Smart. I don't understand how anyone could debate it.
That's the Oscar speech right there. Clap.
4 hours if you want. It's like from his shot selection to, now he's a 40% 3-point shooter. It's just like if you could bring in the biggest Marcus Smart hater on the planet. If you told them to close their eyes and tell you, what do you want Marcus Smart to do on the basketball court? How do you want it to look? They would be describing what he's currently doing. Yep. And those same people will still, and it's just like he wins Defensive Player of the Year. And the first thing that people do is say, oh, well, he wasn't even really the DPOY. It was really like, it's okay to give him credit and acknowledge what he's doing on the floor. It doesn't hurt. It's just like, Just be normal about him. I don't understand why people just can't be normal with him.
And can I just say something about the DPOY conversation? It's one thing if you're like, I thought Draymond should have got it. I thought Bam should have got it. But to sit there and just act like Marcus Smart wasn't at least one of the reasonable choices for the award is crazy. I mean, it's Marcus Smart erasure, and I won't have it happen.
What bothers me about it is like the people who make that claim. Again, as you guys can tell, there's a lot that bothers me about that.
Yeah, I love it so much.
The thing that bothers me about it is the people who say stuff like that don't really understand what makes the Celtics good in the first place. The reason the Celtics defense is elite isn't because they have Marcus Smart. It isn't because they have Robert Williams. It's how all the pieces work together as a unit that makes them the best defense in the league. The same way offensively, the Celtics aren't good because they only have Jason Tatum or they only have Jaylen Brown. It's how all the pieces work together that make them such a threat. So people are like, oh, how could Smart be the defensive player of the year when they have the 14th ranked defense without Robert Williams? Well, I don't know, because it doesn't boil down to one player, right? The fact that they have a league average defense without Robert Williams should tell you, hey, Smart's probably a pretty important piece to the formula. So it just bothers me when people make claims like that, but if you were then to ask them, okay, so when the Celtics have a good defensive game this year, whether Smart's playing or not, Rob's not in there. So the same logic that they want to use to discredit Smart's defense because Rob isn't playing, well, then how are they able to have a game where they play good defense if Rob is still not playing? It just doesn't make sense, and it exposes them of like they just have this blind hatred that I just cannot understand.
It's the blind hatred. They established their position 5 years ago, and they refused to move off their position. Because I think it's like 5 years ago, there were a couple of criticisms that were fair. But now he's playing his role absolutely perfectly. And it's like, it's not a coincidence that as soon as Brad takes over, he's like, I'm done with these small point guards who, by the way, aren't, pure point guard playmakers either. Kemba and Kyrie are score first point guards, and their assists come off their scoring gravity. As soon as Brad takes over, he's like, I know Marcus Smart can be the point guard of this team. I'm empowering to be the point guard of this team. And it's not surprising. I've been saying it the whole time. He's going to continue to get better and better. Like, as he got better and better throughout the season last year, once the Jays trusted that Marcus is going to make the right play and be the right point guard for this team, I'm not surprised that he's career best and everything again, because it's the second year of his career that he's been playing the point guard role. Like, he's really like just finding himself and growing into this role and having the car keys for a second year. Like, he was on his learner's license last year. He just got the keys, he's as an L's, and now second year, he's doing road trips. He's taking the buddies with him. People are drinking in the back. This is a high level driver that's being entrusted with all sets of car keys.
I think the problem is, people think if Marcus Smart takes a single shot in a fourth quarter, he's like the devil. And I just, what to his benefit and sometimes to his detriment, he's a player who is not afraid of the moment. Right. He doesn't care about his percentages. Like, we saw it a lot, everyone always talks about Game 7 against Miami, right? He almost shot them out of Game 7. Okay, whatever. But if you remember, in that Game 1 of the finals, when he came back in with 2 minutes and 40-something seconds left, with the score the same it was in that Game 7, right around 8 to 10 points with under 2 minutes left, he took and made those exact same late fourth quarter threes. Like, you just have to understand that if he's open, your offense needs him to take that shot.
I don't understand how people can't understand that he's like, remember all of the big clutch shots that he's made throughout his Celtics career. Like, seeing him make those shots in the first half against the Raptors reminded me of Game 2 against the Raptors in the bubble. Like, he has big playoff games where he knocks down multiple threes. The conference finals with the IT year, he had, 7 for 9 from 3 in like Game 2. Like, it's the inverse of a Ben Simmons or like even a PJ.
That's the thing. It's a domino effect, right?
Exactly.
If you are someone that wants Tatum and Brown to be aggressive, to live in the paint, to get to the rim, Well, a huge component of that is to have offensive gravity around them. So if Smart is just not going to shoot and is just not going to be a threat, defenses are going to sag off of him, right? So it doesn't mean that he has to shoot the three every time, because as long as teams are going to start respecting his three-point shot, he'll be able to attack that closeout, get a paint touch, and drive and kick. But if teams know that he's not going to be a threat on the perimeter, then they're not going to attack his closeouts. They're not going to give space for Tatum and Brown to dribble and penetrate. So it's like, again, people who complain about it just feel like they're watching, but they're not.
They don't know ball.
But they're not understanding what they're watching. And that's just how they just expose themselves. That's really all there is to it.
They don't know ball, and like you can look at the way that he's defended versus someone like PJ Tucker. Like it's a perfect, you have someone like PJ Tucker out there. Unless he's willing to take 8 threes, then he may as well be taking 0. Because if he's going to hesitate on wide open corner threes with like a half contest, then he's a massive detriment to the offense. Versus Marcus, he's taking wide open catch and shoot threes without hesitation. And there's been enough teams in enough playoff games that have experienced Marcus Smart hitting big shots that they watch how other teams and the best teams in the league defend Marcus Smart. Yes, they sag off him a little bit, but he will punish you. Even if you give him that bit of space, he'll hit you with a pump fake and drive and make a play.
It just goes to show, it doesn't matter what he does. People, they either want to they willingly forget it, or like they want to attribute the success to other. Like he could hit a game-winning shot and it would be like, oh well, the real play was the pass that got on the ball. It's like it's okay to say that he did something good, the same way it's okay to say he did something bad. And I think that's what I never want to be someone that only talks about the good that he does, because there are going to be moments where he makes a mistake. He has a bad turnover or he takes a bad shot. He's human. There is no perfect NBA player. What I just can't stand is the people who just try to pretend like half of his game doesn't even exist. I refuse to allow it to happen.
Well, and how many guys in the league are straight up pure point guards averaging almost 8 assists a game, can make an open three? I mean, there's a reason Matisse Thybulle doesn't play, right? It's because exactly what we're describing here. He won't shoot. He can't shoot. Teams are playing 5-on-4 on defense because they just ignore him. And then on the other side of the ball, can switch 1 through 5 legitimately. Like teams do not try to post up their center against Marcus Smart. Like how many of those there's like LeBron, I guess Giannis can't make an open three either, Drew Holiday, maybe. Like there's a very, very small number of guys who can do the variety of things on both ends that Marcus Smart can. And I think like, unless you're watching him every day, maybe you don't quite appreciate that. But the reason the Celtics can switch 1 through 5 in the way they do is because Rob is super versatile, Al is super versatile, and Marcus Smart is super versatile. And it's almost like people give Al and Rob all this credit and leave Smart out.
But what's crazy is his versatility isn't just on what he guards, but it's how he initiates offense, right?
Right.
How good does this offense look when he's operating out of the post, right? We've seen in Missoula ball his post-up frequency go up. I think he's averaging like 7 post-ups a game, or his frequency went from like 4% to 7%.
7, yeah.
It's an automatic 2 points, whether he's going to find someone as a cutter or he's going to back you down and then lean over and turn with his right shoulder and have that little floater, jumper, whatever you want to call it. So it's like he's putting himself in a position for higher efficiency looks if he decides to shoot it. Like Trae Young's not backing anybody. It's really, I looked it up. The only player that averages similar points per possession in post-ups while having a somewhat close frequency, so Smart's at 7%, it's Luka. So Smart is at like 1.61% or points per possession. Luka's at 1.62, but he has a 15% post-up.
That's pretty insane from Luka, but that's crazy for Smart.
I mean,
but he's a big 6'6", he's a big dude. Smart, but it's the same idea where these guys are able to facilitate offense out of the post, which you're not seeing Ja do that. You're not seeing Steph do that. You're not seeing, all these other high, assist point guards. They don't have that offensive versatility. That's what makes Smart different, where like nobody would say, oh, he's as good a point guard as, Luka or Morant.
Right.
But it's the fact that he allows Joe to have that versatility with different lineups that truly showcases his value and makes him a unique player.
I have a question. Your crowning achievement, or Celtics fans with the brain's crowning achievement, Marcus Smart, Defensive Player of the Year. Do you think we can get Marcus Smart an All-Star spot?
Oh no,
because that would just be the tears.
Do the Defensive Player of the Year. I am ready.
I know.
To get him into the All-Star game.
Well, okay, so these are the locks I have: Tatum, Brown, Giannis, Donovan Mitchell, Embiid, Siakam, KD. The problem is which is 7. That's 7 locks. The problem is there's a bunch of these guards that I actually think so Trey, Halliburton, Garland, Kyrie, DeJounte.
Dude, you're not making that's crazy.
It's just, but like the thing is, he's better than he's playing better than Trey this year. He's played better than Kyrie. Kyrie's having a low-key crap year. I know the fan vote, but
it's not going to matter. Trey's averaging high 20s a game. That's what the All-Star. Do I think
on 40-30 shooting?
I know, but it's not going to matter, dude. People are going to be like 27 and 11 or 9 for Trey, and this guy's averaging 12, and that's how it's going to play out. But Greenie, I respect if you take that on. I won't doubt you.
I'm drawing the paperwork up right now, and first. Let me tell you how crazy I'm ready to get. First, we get him, 1 or 2 All-Star games, right? Yeah. They win a title, so he's got a ring under his belt.
Okay.
I'm not ready to give up on the Hall of Fame agenda.
Okay, all right, I'm fine with that. Yeah,
just laying the groundwork. Yeah. It's going to be an uphill battle. I think he has probably a 1% chance of doing it. I look at it like this. We might live in a world where, who knows, maybe he goes back-to-back DPOY. He can't say for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Why couldn't he follow, like, the Draymond path, right? Like, Draymond has a couple all-stars to his name. Like, he's not that – his numbers aren't all that crazy. But Steph basically earned him those all-star nods. Why – if Tatum is going to be this – top 5, top 3 player, maybe Smart can sort of ride that wave and ride that coattail, but it'll be tough just because of the fan vote. I mean, I could see him, if someone gets hurt, maybe he would be voted in as an alternate, but I think the only sliver of hope we have is just that weird year where the entire Atlanta Hawks roster made the All-Star team, 3 or 4 years ago, but I don't know. I would love to see it just for how mad it will make me.
Oh, yes. It would be amazing. What a day on Twitter that would be.
All right, gentlemen. That was incredible.
that was so much fun.
Very good. So, real quick, got 2 small things before we get out of here, Greenie. One thing I want to ask you, new segment that we probably will never run again, but what was dumber? The Nets giving Blake a welcome home video, or the rumor about Miami being interested in trading for Grant Williams?
It's Miami. Listen,
what is happening there?
I'm a sucker for a good tribute video. I think anytime, it's just something. I think at this point it's kind of lost its luster. So now I just find the humor in it.
Yeah.
So there are 2 fights that I have.
I love your Pat Riley fight.
The first is defending Marcus Smart. The second is exposing the interest kings that are the Miami Heat.
Yeah.
Nothing brings me more joy than whether it's the trade deadline or it's the free agency. There is not a player in the NBA that the Miami Heat are not interested in. But for me to see a tweet right after they just played that they're going to trade for a restricted free agent from a division rival with nothing even remotely interesting to offer for it, I don't know. I think maybe I didn't read the report or what. I don't know if it was said in jest and it just got aggregated. But if that was a legitimate thing, there is not a funny storyline in the NBA season.
I know.
And thinking Brad Stevens is going to trade a restricted free agent who's a key piece to his team to a main rival. None about that made any sense to me.
You don't like the idea of Cody Martin and like a 2026 second?
Right?
No?
Like, what do you have? You know,
I
they're
know.
going to be good, so their picks are going to be trash. They're going to be, in the lower half of the first round. They don't have any, unless you're giving them like Bam, but then the money doesn't match up because Grant only makes $4 million a year or whatever it is. So like, no matter how you wanted to try to structure it, just nothing made any lick of sense. So I don't know. I just can't stand that franchise. I can't stand that fan base. They're all just the worst.
Okay, that leads perfectly into the last thing I want to touch on with you, Greenie. So we talk a lot about like going at other fan bases, and on the pod, Jake and Ben have talked about their least favorite fan bases. For me, it's the Raptors. What's your favorite fan base to interact with that's not the Celtics? Because I have one if you want me to go first. But
So do you mean like favorite to like troll and talk junk?
No, like the one you're like,
One I
when we're
actually
playing
like.
this, that you actually like.
Definitely Kings fans.
Yeah.
Listen, I am so in on the beam. It's like, man,
Hell yeah.
and I feel for them just because, of all the struggles they've had. So I love Kings fans. I don't know. What other fan bases do I even hear from? Memphis fans are cool just because they're like a new, like they'll probably get annoying at some point, but for now they're in that like that sort of grace period. I'd say those are probably my top two right now.
Jake, do you have one?
Yeah, well, because I'm like a small, like a little member of Thunder and Pelicans Twitter, just because.
I love the Pelicans too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And part of it is because of Josh Giddey and Dyson Daniels. So like I'm kind of, I watch a lot of the teams that have Australian players in there. And so like I watch a lot of Thunder, and they're just, Thunder are a great fan base, or at least on Twitter. They're like just very into the nuts and bolts of the game because they kind of have had to be into the intricacies because they haven't been able to be about the wins the last couple of years. And Pelicans fans as well. I think they're kind of similar to the Kings fan. Like they're just here for a good time. They're super. Yeah, I haven't had super negative stuff. There was that like Brandon Ingram, Jason Tatum thing for a little while. But they've obviously given that up.
Like I can respect fighting for your guy.
You're exactly
wrong. You may be wrong when you do it.
Yeah.
I can respect it.
Yeah, what are you going to do? Not do that? Yeah, and I feel that. So, I'm Dyson Daniels and Giddey have me in on Pelicans and Thunder.
Fair. I think the funniest collection of NBA fans is Knicks fans. I just love Knicks fans because they hate their team more than we do. You know what I mean? And it just like on Reddit, at least, if you go to the Knicks Reddit, it is so funny. They have no hope. They've already are like, can we figure out a way to tank? I absolutely love Knicks fans.
Even though it came against the Celtics in that double overtime in the opener last year, that street video of Bing Bong,
hilarious.
Like, I watched that and I just love it. It's just that's just passion. You can't make that stuff up. So I don't really consider them there's no real Boston New York rivalry or anything like that. So I'm with you there. I don't mind them as much.
No, especially for an Atlantic Division team, because the other Atlantic Division teams, the Sixers, the Raptors, the Nets, they're all awful fans. But the Knicks
but you know what? Like I don't even pay any mind to Sixers fans anymore. Like Nets fans, that's dead. It's for me, it's really just like it's
Milwaukee,
Bucks and Miami. Like it's Bucks and Miami for me. Like, those two, but they would say the same thing about us. So it's not doubt. And I respect that, on their end. So, but I just, if I have to hear about Chris Middleton one more time, I might, I don't know.
Was he 1 for 11 yesterday?
Yeah.
Oh man, would have turned the series.
The Hornets last night, what a cakewalk schedule they've had. Makes me.
I know, it's crazy. Like every game is against the Magic and the Hornets. So far.
I looked it up this morning. They've had the 29th easiest schedule in the league so far. So that's great.
That is so lucky.
We have the easiest schedule for the rest of the way. So and we're 20-5. So that bodes pretty well. I don't know if you heard
25.
Yeah,
that's good.
All right. So we got next 3 games coming up. And Jake, tell me if I screwed this up. I screwed it up last pod.
I got
Suns,
you,
Warriors, Clippers, Greenie. What's our record in the next 3? Is that right, Jake?
Suns, Warriors, Clippers, Lakers. You got it, mate.
Yeah. Suns, Warriors, Clippers. So the last 2 is a back-to-back, I'm pretty sure, right? In LA?
Yeah.
You got it.
I'll say 3-1.
I like that.
3-1.
Jake?
If you Sure, I'll go 3-1. But if you could choose, because there's 4 games left, you get to choose 2 wins. It's clearly the Warriors and the Lakers, right? I would be very accepting of a Suns and a Clippers.
Yeah,
loss.
I would say Warriors and like. I mean, listen, I'm just so terrified of Steph Curry. Like I can't even.
Of course.
Like I don't care that they've been bad. I don't care. Like I'm throwing all that out the window until proven otherwise. He keeps me up at like Giannis doesn't keep me up at night. KD doesn't keep me up at night. I close my eyes and I see Game 4 Steph Curry.
I know. Man.
It's been 6 months already. That's probably going to happen for the next 50 years of my life. I don't know.
No, it'll just until June.
That's right.
But even still, like I
no.
still think about the 2010 finals.
Oh, me too.
These are things that I'm just going to live in my life. But like, if they go into Golden State and they lock him down and they win convincingly, listen, I'll feel a whole lot better about sort of where they are. But it's tough because like we don't know who's going to get maybe a maintenance day. So I would say, barring only factoring in Al resting on that back-to-back with the Lakers, I would hope 3-1. But I'm going to caveat it. If you tell me Rob comes back at some point over the next 4, I think they're winning all 4.
I'm just waiting for that questionable tag.
It's
coming.
I tried hard. I had a personal rule to not take the bait. I lasted 21 games, but now I have Missoula telling me he'll be back before you know it. I'm like, all right, well, does that mean like in 5 days, in 2 weeks, like everyone's saying before Christmas and it's already almost mid-December. So like it has to be any day now.
He's coming. I'll go with 3-1 as well.
Oh man.
I can't hold on. I'm in the slop.
Rolling around.
All right, that's going to do it for this one. As always, Greenie, thank you so much for taking the time, jumping on the show. Go, if you're listening, go check out the Barstool Greenie tab to get everything Boston and other stuff, apparently. So, Jake, thanks for coming on. Love your work, man. And that's going to do it. First to the floor, out.